Hey, welcome to our next expert interview. Excited for today's guest. I'm a little bit biased, having been a referral partner for years, a client, and having worked with a lot of our amazing authors. So, also plug because it's always in the background behind me. So today we've got Steve Gordon, author of the $1 Million Book, and a whole bunch of other stuff. So, Steve, you'll do a better job explaining yourself, man. Tell us who you are and what you do.
I'm a recovering engineer, and I've built two businesses. And our current business helps entrepreneurs who maybe have really been great at what they do for a long time. I always like to think that we're in the corner of those professionals who are the best kept secret in town. They do great work. They help people. They make an impact, but maybe they're not getting the word out the way that they should. And so we help them write a book to get the word out, to give them authority, to give them credibility, and to help them attract more clients in a way that has leverage. So they don't have to be out there, doing the belly to belly networking all the time that most professionals find themselves having to do. So I've been doing that now since 2010. We've kind of evolved into writing books for people. And Devin, as you know, that really grew out of when I wrote my first book. So I looked around, I started this business as business number two, looked around all the successful consultants that I had seen had written books. And I said, well, I better write a book. And I tried twice, threw two manuscripts in the garbage because they were terrible. Third time around, I said, I got to have a process. And in perfect engineer fashion, I created a process and I followed it. And I was able to write that book in 30 minutes a day over about 35 days, got it published, and then was really fortunate to have a handful of people, about 15 partners, promote the book. And in that first week that we launched, 5,268 people got a copy of that book. And it took our business from 1.5 person consulting firm with only local clients. I live in Tallahassee, Florida, which if you don't know where that is, I don't blame you because it's not the part of Florida people come to. And overnight, I'm getting inquiries from the UK, from all over the US, Canada, Australia, and it really just transformed the business overnight. And so clients asked us, hey, that worked really well for you. Will you do it for me? And so we started helping clients write their book. And every time we did, they did exponentially better than our clients who didn't write books. So that's, by process of elimination, we've kind of gotten to the point that's all we do now because it works so well.
I love that. And I love that you went there because I was going to ask you to tell the story of like you being your own success. And I love the numbers there on just the impact your book had. Let's go back to you writing that first book and kind of you mentioned two manuscripts and getting stuck.
Mhm.
What do you think were blockers for you? And you could tie that into some clients you worked with. Like what are like some common blockers when people go to write a book?
Well, I think the thing for me the first two times was I did not have a roadmap for what was going to go into the book. I had an idea, a general idea, and maybe a really rough outline, but I don't even know that I had a great, even rough outline. And the thing that got me from two in the trash to one published and making a big impact was creating a really detailed roadmap. And so I was super frustrated after throwing the second one in the trash. And I told my wife, like, this is it. I had a home office. I said, I'm going in the office on Saturday, the home office on Saturday. Don't bug me. I am not coming out until I get an outline for this book that I want to write. And so I was in there till like 4 o'clock in the afternoon, like all day, literally. When I came out, I had this really great outline. And the way that I was able to break the book down, which is really what we still use today with all of our clients, gave me a roadmap so that every time I sat down to write something now, I wasn't sort of trying to think back to what did I write before and now what am I going to say next and kind of making it up as I went because that's what happened the first two times. And so when you do that, a lot of times what will happen is, you're making all these decisions along the way about, I'm at a fork in the road. Do I go left or right? Well, pretty soon, if you keep going left and left and left, you end up so far off track that you don't remember what your point was to begin with. And I see a lot of authors, not necessarily ones that work with us, but we work with, as you know, we work with a lot of people who have tried to write a book 2 or 3 or 4 times, and or they've been trying to write the same book for years and they just can't get it over the hump. And so the minute we're able to give them some structure and give them that roadmap, everything begins to move much faster for them.
Love that. Talk to me about the type of book you wrote and then the type of book that Million Dollar Author helps people write. I think that this is a sticking point for a lot of people. And I know personally, as I'm out there talking to people, this is where a lot of people who have written a book that didn't work, this is where they went wrong. And so talk to me about the type of books that Million Dollar Author is helping write and why that type of book.
Yeah. So, when I wrote my book, I didn't realize what I was doing, but I had kind of trained myself from a marketing perspective in copywriting and direct response copywriting. And so if you remember those old long form sales letters that used to be all over the internet, I used to write those for clients. And so there's a specific rhythm and a pattern to that. And I took that same rhythm and pattern and plugged it into my book when I wrote it. And into all the client books that we did early on and all the ones we still do. But about 8 years ago now, we had a client come to us. He'd already written his book, and it was, Devin, it was literally an award-winning book. So he had written this book. It was on sales, this really amazing approach he had to technical sales. And I read the book, and he came to us because he was frustrated. He'd worked with a couple very big name gurus and gotten very little in terms of result. And he was very frustrated. And he came to us to work with us. And I looked at his book trying to figure out, well, why is this thing that has won literary awards in his industry? It was recognized by the major publication in the industry he was targeting. Why isn't this producing new clients for him? And I read the book and I'm like, this stuff is brilliant. This guy's a genius. So why isn't the book working? And when I started comparing it to the books that we had written for clients and to my own book that had worked so well, it all of a sudden clicked. He had written a textbook. He had all the details in that book about how to do what he would do for you as, if you became his client. But the problem was he was selling to decision makers. And they didn't have time to read a 360-page textbook on how to do this. They didn't want to know how to do it. They wanted to understand that the author, saw their problem and had a vision for a bigger, better future for them, and then had a process to transform that problem into that bigger, better future. And once I realized that, I'm like, okay, this is why this book will never work. And I think the problem you have is when you have a really intelligent, very accomplished person who's an expert at what they do. Maybe they've earned letters after their name, or they've got advanced degrees and all this stuff. And I think, the first kind of instinct is I got to tell them everything. I got to prove to them how smart I am, right? So that they believe that I'm credible. Well, the truth of the matter is decision makers don't need that. And we write books for business owners who are selling to other businesses to sell it. They're selling to decision makers. And a decision maker wants to know, how can you take this problem that I have and turn it into this amazing future over here? And what's the path in between that's proven that you can show to me will get me there so that I can trust you have a solution? That's all I need to know. I don't need to know how to do it. I don't need to know how many, 50-step checklists you have. I just need to know that there's a path that I can believe, and then I can see the transformation.
That's awesome. I know we talk about like ebooks too. That's something people bring up. Like, this is just a quick template book, or this is just something that's small. So let's talk about length of book, because I think this is another thing you teased there, but we didn't go there. So what's the ideal length so that someone can digest the book and actually take action?
Yeah. So Amazon has data on everything, right? Because they're Amazon, and because they're able to see how much, if you have a Kindle, how much of each book that you read, they know that the average nonfiction book reader gets to about page 60, and that's it in any book. Okay. And so 60 pages is probably too short. It doesn't feel like it's got enough authority in it most of the time. And so I think that's too short, but the standard, you know, trade business paperback is going to be 250 to 350 pages. And most people are never going to get through that. And so when we're creating a book that's going to attract clients, we want to engineer that book for consumption. And length is the first way that we do that. Okay. And so we want to target a length between 100 and 150 pages. That's long enough that it looks authoritative and feels authoritative, but not so long that it looks like a lot of work when it's sitting on your coffee table or on your nightstand and you're thinking, do I want to pick this up and read it? So that's the first way that we engineer for consumption, is to get that length in that range.
Love that. Yeah. So we were just talking before we hit record, right? I was at an event last week and I got there and I talked with someone I had sent a book to. So I met with them, right? I followed up and sent a book. And then he shows up. He's like, oh, I read your book on the plane. And I'm like, perfect.
Absolutely.
And so that was one of those things where we always tease that idea of like airplane books, right? Like something you can digest when you get on and get off. That's exactly what he did. And he showed me the book and he had like highlights, bookmarks, notes. And he's like, cool, ready to ask you questions. And I'm like, yep, that's awesome.
Yeah. It's the best experience on a sales call. I mean, if you get on sales calls and you're frustrated that you have to actually sell, which most professionals don't want to do. Most people don't want to have to do that. It's super cool when you show up to that call and they've got your book and they start quoting chapter and verse from your book. And all right, this is all done. I just need to determine like what the terms here are and what they need, and we're out. So, and you've got a new client. So it's a cool experience.
So you mentioned that length is one way that you're engineering for success. What are some other ways that you feel people miss and that, you're really focused on helping them do?
Yeah, well, I'll tell you, probably the biggest mistake is that people tend to want to give the reader way too much backstory at the beginning of the book. Like, here's how I got to know all of this. Here are all of my credentials and all of that. And I hate to tell you, unless your mother's reading it, nobody cares. Because what they want to know is that you understand the problem that they're facing today that you can solve. And so we see this a lot when somebody comes to us and they've already started some of the writing. Usually that's the first thing we have to fix, is that they've got, 20 pages of preamble. And really what we want to do is get directly to the problem that the reader is facing and hit it head on. Like, you've got this problem, and not just the problem, because I always like to, when I'm giving talks, I always say, people don't spend money to solve problems. They spend money to alleviate consequences. Consequences are the second order impact of a problem. And so we want to talk about the problems that are on the surface that people face, and then quickly tie those to those second order consequences. And there's two kinds of those consequences. They're the ones that they know about, and they're the ones that, because you're the expert, you know about, but they're going to blindside this reader. And so now you're going to do them this tremendous service. You're going to build such tremendous trust with them because you're going to reveal to them this thing that they don't know is about to hit them. And so we want to start there because that'll grab people's attention. But if all we do is focus on the problem and we don't give them any hope, they're going to go, I give up. This is, I can't deal with this. It's too negative. So then we want to give them a little bit of hope. And then we want to begin showing them, how you've got a process to solve that. And so, and that's what we call the yellow brick road. It's your unique mechanism, the 3 or 5 or 7 steps that you take someone through to take that big, hairy problem that they have and transform it into this amazing future state.
That's awesome. Yeah, working with clients, switching that hat on, that is sticking point number one for sure, right? Like,
Yes.
This is all the stuff I want to talk about. And you're like, great, let's focus on the problem. Let's alleviate it.
Well, and if you think about it, our brains are wired to see problems first as humans. I mean, that's how we survive, right? And so you have to meet people where they are. If you want to serve them, you have to meet them where they are and then lead them on a journey to, through what they need to where they want to be. But if you start with, and when I was in my first career, technical career, I'd go to these association meetings with all the other professionals. And, there was this constant gripe conversation that went on about clients, that clients, needed to do this and needed to do that and all of this stuff. Well, clients don't understand what they need to do. They only understand, like, I wake up this morning and I have this problem and I don't know how to solve it, And so you have to start with where they're seeing the world and what they understand. Otherwise, you're going to lose them.
Love it. Just for the page count thing, I didn't ask the follow-up question. When you say 100, 150 pages, let's equate that to words if someone's trying to think about how long their manuscript might be.
Yeah. So, I mean, you think in terms of on the very short end, maybe about 15, 16,000 words, and on the longer end, somewhere between 25 and 30,000 words. And that's a great book. You can get lots of stuff in there. And really the difference between that and, and something you might pick up on the New York Times bestseller rack at the bookstore is that longer book doesn't have any more information. It's just got a lot of fluff and story. And so really what we're doing is we're pulling all of that out of there to make it easier to consume.
Perfect. Let's talk about audience. I know this is another sticking point. Some I hear a lot is, how wide do we write because we want to sell 1 million copies, or how narrow do we get because we actually want to make money using the thing?
I mean, it depends on your goals. Do you want to be rich or famous? If you want to be famous, you want to write it to a lot of people. But that's really difficult that's a difficult path to get rich, because to get famous, you got to sell a lot of books, millions of books, and you're only going to make a couple of bucks per book. I always feel like if you've got a very valuable problem that you solve for people, and those people have money, and for most of our clients, they're selling to other businesses or they're selling to wealthy people, then the very fastest and best way to make money is to write a book that might not get you, turn you into the next business celebrity, but that will resonate with those people who have that specific problem, who are willing to write a check to you to solve it. And we've seen clients, pay for the entire investment in working with us before they even publish the book, because we're going to, whenever we work with a client, we give them all this, great marketing strategy that starts. Really, if you're going to market a book, you start before you even really start writing it, to start talking about the fact that you're writing a book, and that attracts people. And then once it's published, you want to publish it to Amazon bestseller status, and you want to get it out to the people who are closest to buying from you as quickly as you can, because money will come in. I think our current record right now, Devin, is 5 hours. So from publishing to first deal signed, for those that didn't do it before. We've had some who have gotten 4, 5, 6, 10 clients before they published, but from book launched to stranger hiring them, 5 hours. And that's kind of the power of a book. But you want to be thinking in terms of, how can I use this to sell and attract more clients into my business? That's where the money is. And so for our clients, type of businesses we work with, they make far more money by giving away the book than they ever will make selling the book.
Love that. Yeah, and it was a setup question, but it is one, right, where I think people have this idea that, like, I want to be on the New York Times bestseller list, which is a whole lot of work, by the way, and just sell 1 million copies.
It's not just a whole lot of work. To get to the New York Times bestseller list, first of all, it's never guaranteed, because it's not straight sales. It's sales plus they have to like your book, the editorial board. Okay. So expect to invest about $250,000 in marketing to get the number of sales that you need to get to that list. Wall Street Journal, actually, their bestseller list doesn't exist anymore. They stopped doing it, I think, in November 2023. USA Today has a bestseller list. You need to be thinking, if you want to get to that list, and we've got clients that have done it, if you want to get to that list, $80,000, $90,000 in retail book sales. And the way most people get to those numbers of retail book sales is they buy them through the right retail outlets, and then they go resell them. So you're looking at, close to or above a six-figure investment to get on those lists. To get on Amazon, you can still call yourself a best-selling author. We just do it built in as a part of the process.
That's awesome. Let's talk timeline. This is another thing I think people get bogged down in. I hear often like the armor that they put on and the war story they want to tell is it took me 3.5 years to write this book. Like that's something to be proud of. And in fact, like getting the book to the finish line, right? So talk to me about like what's the ideal timeline. I know there's a benchmark that you're always chasing, but talk to us about time to get published.
Yeah, that 3 years in the writing cabin with the little pipe and the chapeau where you go out and do the writing thing. That's a really expensive exercise because you're losing 3 years of new client growth in that process. So what we want to do is compress the time that it takes to write the book, because really when the book is published, you're not at the finish line, you're at the start line. And I think most people don't realize that. They look at this as some big project that's going to take a long time. It doesn't have to. The kind of books that we're talking about typically don't require a lot of research. You're already an expert at what you do. If you're not an expert, then you're probably not ready to write a book. But if you've been doing what you do for more than a couple of years, you're probably more of an expert than any of your clients are. And so they would be served by being able to read about your expertise. Right? So you already are an expert. All we're going to do is download your expertise and put it into a book. And we're able to do that in 90 days. And we'll even write it for you so that you don't have to do the writing. You just have to bring the ideas and be able to talk about them. And as you know, Devin, we've got a very compressed process, all designed to get the book published so that you can get to that starting line and start really growing your business. And the reason that we feel so strongly about that is because I know the impact. I've lived it now 5 times. Every time I published a book, my business grew faster. So we want to get people there as quickly as we can.
Love it. So I know for my book, right, from blank page, it took commitment. If we start from like when I signed up as a client, that's a joke. But from when I actually committed to
when you started
process, it was 45 days book in hand. And I know Steve and I had a meeting on that. And I'm like, all right, I'm committed. Like I'm running tomorrow. And Steve's like, yeah, I've heard this before. And then luckily we did run. What's the record? What's the fastest book you put through the company?
The fastest book we put through the company, actually is one of mine. So it probably doesn't count because I wrote it in 2 days. And the fingers were flying across the keyboard. But the fastest we've done for a client is 13 days.
Wow.
And it had to be done in 13 days for a big conference that this particular client had gone to, and he'd written already 14 books. I think this was his 15th book. And so it helped that he'd been through the process. He'd written books and published books before, but his team that he had traditionally worked with couldn't get it done that fast. And so he came to us and we were able to get it done almost overnight.
Yeah, I know. Yeah, I know you worked your ass off for that.
Yeah, but it was fun. It was a blast. And it was a great book on a topic that I personally was super interested in on AI. So a lot of fun.
That's all. Talk to me about paths to publishing. So I think this is another thing when we talk book world, there's, traditional publishing, there's self-publishing, and then there's kind of this hybrid world in between. Like let's really educate on like, what are your paths to publish? And then kind of where does $1 Million Author fit in?
Yeah. So traditional publishing is where you go to, one of like Simon and Schuster or Penguin or one of the big names. And what that process looks like is you're not even going to start by writing the book. You're going to start by writing a book proposal. Then you're going to go and shop that. And that could take anywhere from 6 months to 2 years. And you're going to get a lot of rejection along the way. Remember, all this time, there are clients that could have hired you and paid you. So the meter is running and it gets very expensive the longer this goes. So if you get the book accepted, and it needs to be, to go that route, an absolutely exceptional book, then you get accepted and you start writing, and they're going to give you a deadline to get the thing done. And they're probably looking at a 2-year process, start to finish, once the book is accepted. You might get an advance, but chances are, if you don't have a track record, there's not a big 6-figure advance coming. So people think that that's a really great thing. To me, that's small change compared to what you could make from getting the book in the hands of clients who could hire you. And so that's that process. You lose control of it in lots of ways. You lose the rights because the publishing house is going to get the rights for publication of the book. You lose control of the timeline, which is a challenge. And what you used to get and really need from those publishers was distribution, because everything got, back in the old days, before Amazon and the internet, everything got distributed through bookstores, and they had access to the bookstores. And these days you don't need that anymore. I read a ton of books. I don't remember the last time I was in a bookstore, and I used to love going to bookstores. I would go and browse and find a new business book, and it was like a great day when I got to go do that. But I haven't done that in years because, I have the entire world's library of business books or fiction books or everything else right here. I don't have to leave, right? So nobody does that anymore. So the big advantage that you got now is gone, right? And it comes with all of these other disadvantages. So that's one route. Then on the other end of the spectrum, you go the self-publishing route, where you write the book, then you figure out how to upload it on Amazon, you figure out how to get a cover design, maybe you go to Fiverr or something like that. And, and you go through all the steps. It's not that difficult. It can be done. What I find when people go that route, a couple of things that they run into. Number one, they tend to get stalled because they don't have any accountability and they don't have a roadmap. And so sometimes it's really easy to just get stuck, not knowing what the next step is, because there are a lot of steps in the process. And so that's one thing. The other thing where people, I think, get stuck a lot going that route is they can get the book done, and there are plenty of YouTube videos and resources out there. If you really wanted to go that route, you could do it, and it wouldn't be too difficult. But then you have to market the book, and that's a whole other skill. And if you've not been great at marketing your business, and now you've got this new baby called a book to market, that's going to be another hurdle to overcome. Not impossible, but all of these things delay you getting results from it. So then the third path is a hybrid of publishing and self-publishing. And that's really where we operate. And so what we do with our clients is we give them that structure and that roadmap and that accountability. We'll even write it for them. We give them a team. And I always tell people, like, there aren't any successful authors out there that you can point to that didn't have a team behind them, right? They've got editors, they've got designers, they've got, people that are looking at the book from a strategy perspective and giving them feedback. And you really want to have that team. You don't want to do it on your own. So you either need to build that team yourself, or you can come to a company like ours and hire it, because we've got it all in a box. We've got it all very, simple, and we've got a roadmap for you that's laid out. And most importantly, we've got people that are going to help keep you accountable and on track. We've done this hundreds of times, where most people who go the self-publishing route will do it once, maybe twice in their life.
That's awesome. Yeah, it's definitely something I think people like have the hype of the big publisher. You want your book at Barnes and Noble or in these places. But again, we're talking tangible, real books you can use, send, and make money using. So I think that's important. And then I know I hear a lot of the piecemeal pricing stuff where it's like, well, I went here and then I paid for this and then this and then this and then this. And like they will nickel and dime you until there's nothing left, because there's so many aspects to the process.
Well, Devin, just to piggyback on that, you don't know this, but when we first started doing this, all we did was the writing, and I didn't really fool with the rest of it. We didn't have a design team at that point. We didn't have people that would do the page layout and all of the other things, would handhold people through the publishing and all of that. And we would write the book, and then our clients would be super frustrated because they had to go do the rest of the stuff themselves. And, what finally pushed me over the edge was I had a client go and use Fiverr and there's nothing wrong with Fiverr. I mean, it's a cool service and all that, but they used it for graphic design for their book cover. And it was the most horrific looking book cover. And this was a really good book. And mom told us not to do it, but I'll tell you a little secret. We all judge books by their cover. Okay. And if you don't have a good, compelling cover and a really compelling title, no one is going to know what's inside that. Doesn't matter how good it is. And so I finally just said, like, we can't do this anymore. So we started hiring, built a design team to handle all of that stuff. We've got a full publishing team. We've got an audiobook team. You need all of that to really be able to get through this. And yeah, you can piecemeal it out, but as they say, your mileage may vary.
Perfect. Talk to me about format. So we've got, right, ebooks, paperback, hardcover, audiobooks. What format should people publish in?
You want all of them. Okay. Like you want everything. The reason you want everything is you don't necessarily know how your future client prefers to consume content. Right. So some people are, hey, I only read on Kindle. Some people are, I only read in, physical books. Some are only audiobook. Okay. And some are insane like me. Like I found a book that was recommended to me. I immediately bought it on Kindle because I wanted the instant gratification of having it. This is while I was on the trip that I was on last week, so I could start reading a little bit of it. And then Kindle offered me the opportunity for $7.49 to get the audiobook so I could read and listen at the same time, which if you've never done it is actually a hack because you can put that audio on like 1.5 or 2x and then look at the words and you can read a book super fast. And then I like to have the physical books because if it's a really good book, I want it on my shelf and I'll go back and highlight and make notes and put stickies in it so I can find things quickly because I find it slow to find things on Kindle. So I'll buy it on all three. It's a triple win for the author. So you want it on everything. With our authors, we even give them a PDF. So if they want to have something they can email to somebody, they can do that pretty easily too.
Let's talk ghostwriting, right? Because we haven't used the word, but let's use the word. And then I want to ask you the question I know I've heard at trade shows like 7,000 times. So let's just let you answer it, which is like, oh, so it's ghostwriters. And then kind of the follow-up question usually is, but it's not authentic if I don't write it.
Well, if it's not your ideas, yeah, then it's not authentic and you shouldn't put your name on it. But there are two roles in the creation of a book, two primary roles. There's the role of author and the role of writer. Sometimes those are fulfilled by the same human being. Sometimes those are fulfilled by two different human beings. The author is the person with the ideas, and the writer is the person who puts those ideas on the page in English that we can all understand and get the point across. Okay. Now, there are some really great authors who are not great writers and they need help with the writing. There's no shame in that. If you go and look at business books, you will see people who have come up with breakthrough ideas that have changed the way that we do business. And then they'll have sometimes a writer cited underneath their name. Sometimes there'll be a ghostwriter, and by that person's not cited, but they will have been involved. So most of the books you've read that maybe have helped you grow your business, there's been that author, that idea person, and then they've had writers behind them helping them. And so that you just need to understand that. And it's very easy to, it's very easy to get a book written in your voice. It's easier than you would think it would be. The way we approach it, we call it better than ghostwriting, because the way most ghostwriting works is you hire a writer, right? I need a ghostwriter. I need writing help. Makes sense. Well, then that writer is going to start interviewing you, and they're going to interview you, and they're going to spread these interviews typically over months. So now this process is getting drawn out, which we've already talked about is bad. And what's worse for most entrepreneurs who maybe have a little bit of a short attention span. Maybe they suffer a little bit of that entrepreneurial ADD like most of us do. Like if you interview me now about something and we talk about 2 or 3 chapters, and then you interview me 3 months from now about that, about the next set, I am not going to remember what it is that I said 2 or 3 months ago. All right. So we're basically going to start over. And that bogs down the whole process. And so it makes it very difficult. The other problem with having the ghostwriter do those interviews is that they're a writer, and extracting your ideas and getting them organized is not a writing exercise, it's a strategy exercise. And so what we've done, what we figured out very early on is that we actually need to have a book strategist who interviews our clients to extract the ideas, to help them get the ideas organized and build that roadmap. And then we hand those interviews and that outline to the writer. So the writer already has the strategy piece decided for them. And now they can do what they're absolutely best at, which is writing and making you sound great. And so, and then one of the ways one of the hacks we figured out in all of this is that when we want a book to sound very much like the author's voice, well, all the writers we hire are not just really great business writers. They also all write fiction, either professionally or as a hobby, which means they're really great at creating character voices. And that's something that's just kind of unique to us. We figured out, well, if we hire writers that have these two qualities together, guess what? You're just now a character in your own book. And so it's very easy for them to model your voice and have your book sound like you. So that's kind of how we approach it. That's why we call it better than ghostwriting, because we think it is.
Talk to me about the level of writing. We didn't really go here, but I do want to ask that question. I find, and this is again me putting I've worked with a lot of clients and seen them make a bunch of edits, right? They want to sound amazing and write at this PhD level, especially super educated people. What level of readability should the book land in?
Yeah, that's a big trap for people. Even very sophisticated readers don't want to have to work that hard, and reading and thinking is work. And so even if you have a sophisticated audience, you want to write at a relatively low reading level as the target. So typically we're targeting 10th grade reading level or below. And it's not that you have unsophisticated ideas, it's just that you want to communicate them plainly. And really what you end up with is much greater clarity. And so if you think about one of the most celebrated writers of all time, Ernest Hemingway, and what is he known for as a writer? He's known for using, instead of $5 words, he uses nickel words. Instead of long sentences, he uses short sentences, right? And yet he's one of the most celebrated writers of all time. That's what we're going for, is clear, plain, and persuasive language, not necessarily sophisticated language.
That's fun. Let's talk about other benefits of writing a book. I think this is something that I personally can attest to. You probably can from writing your own books. And the first word that comes to mind there for me is clarity, right? I know by the time I was done writing my book, I had so much clarity in my message, what I'm going to talk about, how I'm going to talk about it, which made me a better podcast guest, a better speaker. It's made it clearer on how to sell my stuff. What are some other benefits you find by going through the book writing process?
Well, so, I mean, we see this all the time, it because, you've been on the team and worked in that strategy role. You're going to come out of the process with not just more clarity, but you're probably going to improve your own process of how you help your clients as you go through it, because you're forced to examine it and really think it through in a way that you've probably never been forced to do before. So that's going to get better. Often we come out of this having completely rebranded a business in a really positive way. So you come out with, maybe you've got a process, but by the end of it, we've helped you create brandable terms for every step of the process. Now you've got not just a process, but you've got a completely unique process because nobody else has it. You've heard me use terms on here like the better than ghostwriting process. When we design covers, we design bookstore quality covers. not just a cover, right? We have all of these brandable terms throughout because that makes our system unique compared to anyone else in the marketplace. And so we want to help our clients create that. That's a great byproduct of all of this. You come out with a marketing system. If you work with a company that really leans in on marketing, I always tell people we're a marketing company that's disguised as a publisher. The reason we published books is we found it was the very best marketing that you could do. And so, you're going to have an entire marketing system starting really from before you write the first word all the way through. Here's what, we're going to equip you with something that you can now use as an evergreen marketing system. We call it the book ATM, where it should just be spitting out clients and hopefully money into your bank account, on a month by month, week by week basis. And, and what I find is that simplifies things for people because people are running around. Most business owners are running around and they just saw some ad on Instagram about the latest funnel they need to create. Well, we're going to simplify all that. And we're going to give you about 3 things that if you just execute these 3 things for the rest of your career, you don't have to worry about any of that other stuff ever. Right. And so you get simplicity out of it and you get leverage out of it. That to me is really that's the game changer. So, Devin, I don't know how it's been for you, and I'd love to hear your experience with this, but I went from having to go to networking events. Usually I'd go to 2 morning networking events and at least 2 or 3 in the evening. And I had young kids at the time and I was trying to build this business. And the minute I published a book, in less time than it took me to attend those events, I could send all of my very best ideas out to 100 or 200 people by sending out copies of the book. It took me less time to put those together and send them out than going to all those events. And so I was able to not just hope that I might bump into my next client, and that's usually what those events were. There were a whole lot of hope. Now I knew I was targeting exactly who I wanted to work with. I could look them up, I could find a list, I could send them a book and follow up with a phone call. And sure enough, if I didn't get a conversation most of the time from that. And so it put me in control and it gave me a lot of leverage.
I love that you talk about that. I mean, I mail books all the time. I was going to reach over and grab, I've got my little stack of first class ones and then my colored envelopes, depending on how fast I want them to get there. And yeah, I'll mail books all the time because I know it's going to the right person or the right referral partner. It also, I feel breaks down this cold outreach thing where we all have been trained on how to build a list, the Dream 100, all these different tactics to building lists. And then the friction to go from building the list to doing something with it is where most people never jump, right? When you have the book, it's okay, you have the list, get the mailing address, mail it with a nice little letter and go. And I know you sent me 10X is better than 2X with the letter, right? And I remember getting that book going, dang, Steve's doing the thing.
Yeah. I mean, I'll send my books out, usually as a first kind of volley, then I'll send other people's books out because what I find is that when you're marketing to decision makers, people who are successful, they typically are readers. And so what I'll do, even when I send my book out, often I'll include a little card in there that is pre-printed that is, a breakdown of the key takeaways from the book. And if I send somebody else's book out, I'll do that same sort of thing. So they don't even have to read it to get value from it. So what am I doing there? I'm becoming a really valuable person in that person's world. And when I call, that makes them much more likely to pick up the phone. And my whole goal is to get them to pick up the phone because I can't sell anything unless I can have a conversation. And, I know we're probably getting close to time, but one of the things that I think is really a crime, most people who are very good at what they do, they have all these great ideas, right? They help people, they do amazing work for their clients, but the only way to ever experience their brilliance is to get inside their conference room in their office where they can share those ideas. And so what does that professional do? Well, they spend all of this time belly to belly trying to meet people. I mean, it's a tremendous waste of time most of the time. They have put all of their best ideas in the single most expensive package themselves that they could ever come up with. right? With zero leverage when they are shipping themselves around to event after event after event. They can only talk to one person at a time unless they're speaking on stage, and most of them aren't. Um, and so what we're doing is we're just flipping the script on that. And we're saying, all right, let's put all of your best ideas, the ones that people love you for and pay you for. Let's put all of them in a book. Don't worry, nobody's going to steal them because do-it-yourselfers are never going to become a client anyway. Put them all in a book. Let's let that book go out and sell people on working with you, because real clients just want to know that you've got a system, you've got a process that they can trust, that you're an authority, you're an expert. The book is a great artifact that demonstrates that. Now they want to work with the one who wrote the book.
Perfect. Yeah, we are butting up on time a little bit. There are two questions I want to hit, and then Gary and Adrian, if you guys have questions, feel free to either throw them in the chat or I'll try to let you guys at least get one or two in. The first thing I want to talk about was cost of a book. This was something that I had an aha moment with. We talked about mailing books or using books at trade shows, or, they're physical. The crazy thing that I found, right, was, a paperback book cost me $2.35. And so, like, what else can I buy for $2.35? Like, you can't. Like, there's nothing else I can invest in for that investment that has the same lasting impact. And so just what's the comments on cost of a book? And like, let's just drive that home real quick.
I mean, there isn't, I mean, you just made it. Like if the prospect isn't worth $2.35 plus maybe some postage to send a book to them, why are they on your list? Why are you interested in working with them? Like, what are we doing here? And I mean, the math on the ROI on this really becomes pretty incredible. You and I have worked some events for our company together, and even at a higher price of getting a hardback book, which is going to run you about $10 a copy, let's say. We've spent a few $1,000s on books and walked away from an event with $250,000 of business. Where else can you do that? I mean, those are returns that you can't get on Wall Street and that you can't get from Facebook ads or Google ads. I mean, where else can you get those returns? Very few places.
And the longevity. And so you already went there. Let's talk trade show, then longevity. So for the trade show, the one thing I was going to bring up that I loved, especially when we were at that multi-day event, is by day 2, actually it was even at the end of day 1, we had people coming up going, oh, that's that book. I saw people with that. And so the book becomes way better than a business card because it's this tangible thing that's sitting on the desks. It's in the purses. People are seeing it. And I know it drove so many more conversations to the booth.
Absolutely. And so you get a branding effect when you give them out like that. We've done events where we've had we've paid usually the event to let us put the books into all of the little bags of stuff that people get. And I'll tell you a little secret. When people leave the conference, all of that junk gets thrown away, but your book goes home with them every time. And it's been interesting. Like that, the first time we ever did that, people are registering, they're getting their stuff. The next morning, I had somebody come to me and say, got your book in my bag. I read it last night. How do I get signed up? We signed him up. 90 days later, his book was done. He's killing it now because he's speaking all over the country using this book because he's used it to get on stages. And that kind of thing will happen. Now, I did trade shows for years in my first business and I didn't have a book, and we would do all the usual brochures and the junk and all of the, the tchotchkes and all of that. Never once did any of those really bring somebody back to the booth to say, oh, I got this rubber stress ball that you gave out. Can I be your client? That never happened.
That's awesome. And the last note there, we'll drive home, and then I have one question from Gary. Is the book takes up physical real estate? I know you have a couple of stories. We don't have to go super in depth, but like they sit on your nightstand, they sit on your bookshelf, and at some point you'll take action.
Yeah. So I'll give you the best short story of this. My first book had been out about 2.5 years, and I get somebody booked on my calendar, for a sales call. and I get on Zoom, and the guy's in the UK and he's got the British accent. I won't try and do that because I would have a really bad British accent. But he gets on, he's got the British accent. First thing he says to me is, "I've not read your book and I'm never going to read your book." And I'm like, "What in the world is this? Like, what is this call about?" He said, "A buddy gave me your book 2 years ago. I love the idea. It's been sitting on my nightstand for 2 years. And I wake up in the morning and I see it, and I go to bed at night and I see it. I don't know what the book saw or heard sitting on his nightstand. I don't want to know, but he saw my book and my name for 2 years, twice a day. I could not pay for that kind of exposure." And he showed up and he said, "I know I need what the promise says on the cover because we had a good title. And on the cover was your website and your name, and I'm here. What does it cost to work with you?" Client signed up. Done. Easy. So by owning real estate in somebody's world, whether it's on the corner of their desk or their nightstand or wherever else they carry it, this is why I love mailing physical books. I don't like sending PDFs. That we all have that folder on our computer where PDFs go to die. Don't be there. Own real estate in their world. You get to do it for free.
Love it. Adrian, if you have any questions, think about it. I'll queue you up in a second. One question we had, Steve, is, are there any industries that are better suited for this type of book than other industries?
So if you're selling anything complicated or expensive, this is probably a good fit, because when you're selling something complicated or expensive, there's a decision-making process that your buyers are going to go through that is more extended. They may need to understand a few more things before they make the buying decision, and you want to educate them on what they need to know from your perspective. You don't want you don't want your competitors to be the ones that are educating them. So that's usually where it's a good fit. I always tell the story. I gave a talk to a group of CEOs, got about 10 or 12 years ago now. And right in the front row, one of the business owners fell asleep. Well, I find out after the fact, he was perfectly valid in doing that because he owned Krispy Kreme donut franchises. He didn't need a book. He just needed a box of donuts or flip the hot donuts now sign on, and he's got a line. But unless you're selling something like that, if it's more complicated than that, you probably need a book.
That's awesome. Adrian, any questions from you? No, you're good? All right, perfect. Steve, I appreciate the time, man. I know we're butting right up on the end. Is there anything we missed? Anything you wanna add in, a topic that you feel like we didn't touch?
I think we covered a lot today. Great questions. And I think the only thing, I'd throw that back at you. I mean, you see this sort of from a different perspective than I do. Is there anything that for your folks would be important?
Yeah, I think it's just the investment and the time, right? Like, it's the two big hurdles, right? And I think that the thing I can advocate for is pick a partner who can compress time. And obviously I'm biased for $1 Million Author as a client and a brand rep, but like, we're compressed time. And then the other part is, yes, it's going to cost you money. Even if you piecemeal it together, like by the time you piecemeal together the editor, the writer, the this, the that, it's going to be a minimum 10,000 investment to do it decent. And you can partner with companies that can get you there for anywhere from 10 plus, right? And good products might be in the 30, 40 range. And so I just want people to hear that like, yes, it's an investment, but if you go with the right partner who has the marketing piece and maybe has an ROI guarantee, you're not going to lose.
Yeah. Well, I mean, that's, I think, super important. And there's a value on your time too. The speed in business is an enormous advantage.
Love that. Adrian, you asked questions on how to get in touch. So we'll put links below the recording. So for those listening on the replay, you'll see links. There'll be a link to schedule a consultation. There'll be a link to download a copy of the $1 Million book. There'll be a link to an in-depth webinar as well. And then I'll put some links to contact Steve. Adrian, you can ping me and I can connect you with whichever one of those resources you want. And if you want to talk to Steve directly, I'll make an intro for you guys. Awesome. So with that, Steve, I appreciate you, man. Any other last words, calls to action, anything you want people to hear?
Well, I think everybody ought to have a book. I think it's the very best, easiest way to sell. So I know we're getting up on time. Did Gary have a question?
I think he's good. His was the industry question.
Okay, perfect.
Awesome. Well, Steve, I appreciate you, and thanks for everyone who was listening. Again, look for all the links below. We drove a lot of content here. We'll timestamp so it's easier for everybody. So appreciate you, and thank you for the time.